When journalist Emma Hayes reluctantly signs inheritance papers for her estranged grandfather's farm, she only wants to clear out the property quickly and return to her carefully constructed life in Chicago. Hidden beneath the floorboards of the abandoned farmhouse lies evidence of a decades-old conspiracy involving the powerful Blackwood family and the poisoning of an entire town. With the help of her grandfather's loyal friend Daniel, Emma must unravel the truth behind her parents' deaths while evading Blackwood's mercenaries and corrupt officials who will stop at nothing to keep their deadly secrets buried forever. Before we begin, write in the comments where you're listening to our stories from. Subscribe to our channel, it's free and you can always change your mind. Enjoy the story. The smell of death clung to the lawyer's office. Emma Hayes couldn't pinpoint exactly what created that impression. Perhaps the stale air, the dusty law books, or the way Mr. Abernathy's roomy eyes settled on her with something between pity and calculation. Whatever it was, she wanted nothing more than to sign whatever papers would end this ordeal and escape back to her carefully constructed life in Chicago. "You're certain I can't convince you to reconsider, Miss Hayes?" Mr. Abernathy's voice crackled like parchment as he slid the final inheritance document across his polished mahogany desk. "Your grandfather's property represents a significant asset." Emma's pen hovered over the signature line. "My grandfather stopped being family 25 years ago, Mr. Abernathy. I'm signing these papers and selling that farm as quickly as possible." Something flickered in the old lawyer's eyes. Was it disappointment? Fear? She couldn't tell. "Very well. But I'm obligated to inform you that the property must be properly cleared of personal effects before any sale can proceed." Mr. Hayes was something of a collector. Emma bit back a sigh, glancing at her watch. Her editor expected the feature article on Chicago's urban renewal by Monday. How long would that take? A weekend should suffice. The property isn't large, just the farmhouse, a barn and 80 acres. "I've taken the liberty of preparing a key." He slid a tarnished brass key across the desk with unexpected solemnity. "William was adamant that you should be the one to go through his effects. 25 years without a word, and now he's giving me chores from beyond the grave." Emma snatched up the key, ignoring the way it seemed unusually heavy in her palm. Mr. Abernathy cleared his throat. "There is one more matter. Blackwood Development has expressed considerable interest in the property. They've preemptively made an offer, 3 times the market value." He passed her a business card with an embossed golden logo. "Their representative asked to be contacted directly if you're amenable." Emma frowned. "Blackwood Development? Why would they? Prime farmland for their new subdivision, I imagine." Abernathy's voice was carefully neutral. "Though I should inform you that William rejected their offers repeatedly over the years." "Well, I'm not William." Emma tucked the card into her jacket pocket and signed the final document with a decisive flourish. Outside, rain spattered against the windows of her rental car as Emma plugged the farm's address into her GPS. An hour's drive from the city, the directions led her deeper into the countryside, through the small town of Pinewood. As she drove down Main Street, she noticed empty storefronts, a shuttered factory, and few signs of prosperity. A hand-painted sign on the town's edge read, "Pinewood, growing together since 1878, though very little appeared to be growing here now." The farm stood at the end of a winding gravel road that cut through fields gone wild with neglect. Emma parked before a 2-story farmhouse with peeling white paint and a sagging porch. The structure wasn't exactly dilapidated, but it whispered of abandonment, of stories left untold. "Let's get this over with," she muttered, grabbing her overnight bag from the passenger seat. The key turned with surprising ease in the lock. The door swung open on well-oiled hinges, not what she expected from an abandoned farmhouse. Inside, the air smelled not of dust and decay, but of wood polish and... was that coffee? Emma froze in the doorway, her senses suddenly alert. The house should have been empty for months, yet it felt recently vacated, as if her grandfather had just stepped out. "Hello," she called, feeling foolish but unable to shake the sensation of being watched. Only silence answered as she moved cautiously through the front hall, past a living room with worn but clean furniture, into a kitchen that gleamed with unexpected care. A single coffee mug sat upside down on a dish towel by the sink. She touched it, bone dry. On the refrigerator, held by a magnet shaped like a tractor, was a note in cramped handwriting. "Emma, if you're reading this, I've finally run out of time. I'm sorry for everything, for the silence, for the secrets, for leaving you with this burden. What I've hidden here may put you in danger, but you deserve to know the truth. Trust no one, especially not the Blackwoods. The key to understanding is beneath the 7th floorboard from the east wall in my bedroom. Use it wisely. I hope someday you'll forgive me." Grandpa Will Emma read the note twice, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was not the bitter, estranged grandfather she'd been told about. This was a man who sounded haunted, frightened even. She looked around the kitchen again, seeing it with new eyes. This wasn't just a house she needed to clean out. It was a message her grandfather had carefully preserved, knowing she would be the one to find it. Her phone rang, startling her so badly she nearly dropped it. Unknown number. "Hello? Miss Hayes." The voice was smooth, professionally warm. "This is Catherine Meyer, legal counsel for Blackwood Development. I understand you've inherited the Hayes property." Emma's eyes flicked to the note on the refrigerator. "Trust no one, especially not the Blackwoods." "How did you get this number?" Emma asked, moving toward the window. Outside, darkness was falling, and with it came the unsettling awareness of how isolated the farmhouse was. "Your contact information was included in the county records once the transfer was filed this afternoon." A pause. "Miss Hayes, my clients are prepared to make an extremely generous offer for the property. Sight unseen, no inspections required. We could complete the paperwork as early as tomorrow morning." Emma watched raindrops trace paths down the kitchen window, her reflection a pale ghost against the gathering darkness. "That's very interesting, Ms. Meyer, but I'll need time to consider my options." "Of course." The voice cooled several degrees. "But I should mention that the offer has a 24-hour expiration. The Blackwoods are eager to move forward with development plans." 24 hours to decide on property that's been in my family for generations? That seems rather rushed. "Business opportunities wait for no one in this economy, Miss Hayes." Another pause. "Shall we say noon tomorrow? I could bring the paperwork to you directly." Emma's gaze drifted back to her grandfather's note. "What I've hidden here may put you in danger." What had the old man gotten himself into? "I'll call you," Emma said finally, and ended the call before the lawyer could respond. The house creaked around her, as if settling into the conversation. Emma climbed the stairs slowly, each step groaning beneath her weight. The upper hallway held 4 doors, all closed. She tried each one: a bathroom with clawfoot tub, a small office lined with books, a spare bedroom with a stripped mattress, and finally, at the end of the hall, what must have been her grandfather's room. Unlike the rest of the house, this room felt truly abandoned. Bed neatly made but covered in a thin film of dust, curtains drawn, a water glass on the nightstand with a dried ring at the bottom. This was where he had died, she realized. Alone in this room, with whatever secrets he'd been keeping. Emma counted 7 floorboards from the east wall and knelt. The board shifted easily under her fingers, as if it had been removed many times before. Beneath it lay a small metal box and a peculiar brass key unlike any she'd seen before. Intricate, almost medieval in its design. The box opened easily, revealing newspaper clippings, photocopies of documents, and a small leather-bound journal. The top clipping was from 28 years ago. "Mysterious illness strikes Pinewood, 12 dead." Emma's hands trembled. Her parents had died in that epidemic when she was just 3 years old. The official story was that they'd contracted a rare strain of encephalitis. After their death, her grandfather had shipped her off to be raised by her maternal aunt in Chicago. That abandonment had defined her childhood. As she sifted through the papers, a photograph slipped out, her parents holding her as a toddler, standing beside her grandfather on this very farm. They were all smiling. On the back, in the same cramped handwriting as the note, "The last good day, before I knew what they had done." Emma sat back on her heels, documents scattered around her. Who were they? What had been done? And what did the strange key open? A floorboard creaked downstairs. Emma froze, listening intently. The sound came again. Deliberate, slow. Someone trying to move quietly through the house. She hadn't heard a car approaching, hadn't heard the front door open, but someone was definitely inside. Gathering the papers and box with shaking hands, she pushed them back under the floorboard and replaced the loose plank, slipping only the strange key into her pocket. As she rose to her feet, the bedroom door swung open. A man stood silhouetted in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat onto the worn carpet. "Don't scream," he said quietly. "I'm not here to hurt you, but we need to talk about what your grandfather found in the barn." Emma's heart hammered in her chest as she backed away from the stranger, frantically searching for a weapon, an escape route, anything. "Who are you?" Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "How did you get in here?" The man stepped fully into the room, hands raised in a placating gesture. Rainwater dripped from his dark hair onto a worn leather jacket. He was younger than she'd first thought. Mid-30s perhaps, with the weathered complexion of someone who spent most of his time outdoors. Name's Daniel Reeves. I was a friend of your grandfather's. His eyes, piercing blue even in the dim light, swept the room, lingering on the floorboards she'd just replaced. And I've had a key to this place for years. Will wanted someone keeping an eye on things. If you're such a good friend, why weren't you at his funeral? Emma edged toward the doorway, calculating her chances of making it downstairs and out the front door before he could catch her. A shadow passed over his face. Couldn't risk it. The wrong people were watching. The Blackwoods? The name slipped out before she could stop herself. Daniel's eyes narrowed. So you know about them already. Did Will leave you a note? Emma said nothing, her hand closing around the strange key in her pocket. The man sighed, lowering his hands. Look, I understand why you don't trust me, but your grandfather spent the last 25 years of his life trying to build a case against one of the most powerful families in the state. Now you're here, and they're suddenly offering you a fortune for this land. Doesn't that seem suspicious? Why would they care about a rundown farm? Emma asked, buying time. Because of what's hidden here. Evidence that could destroy them. He gestured toward the loose floorboard. And because they never found the hidden room. Emma's pulse quickened. What hidden room? For a moment, Daniel looked puzzled, then understanding dawned. He didn't tell you everything in the note. Probably trying to protect you. He hesitated. I can show you, but first I need to know if you found the key. Emma's fingers tightened around the metal in her pocket. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Give me one good reason why I should trust you. Daniel's expression softened. Because I was there the night your parents died. I was 15, working summers at this farm. Your dad was teaching me about crop rotation when the sirens started. His voice grew distant. 7 people collapsed at the town festival that night. 5 more over the next week, including your parents. The official story was encephalitis, but your grandfather never believed it. What did he believe? Emma whispered, though part of her already knew the answer. That it was chemical poisoning. That Blackwood Industries had been running illegal tests on land adjacent to this farm, and something went terribly wrong. Daniel met her eyes. Your grandfather had proof. Soil samples, water tests, medical records he obtained through a nurse who later died in a suspicious car accident. He hid everything in a place the Blackwoods could never find, no matter how many times they searched this property. Emma thought of the strange key in her pocket. And you want me to just hand over this evidence to you? A complete stranger who broke into my house? I didn't break in. I have a key, remember? His mouth quirked up slightly at one corner. And no, I don't want you to hand anything over. I want to help you finish what your grandfather started. He paused. The town needs it. Those people, your parents, deserve justice. The rain intensified outside, drumming against the roof like impatient fingers. Emma studied the man's face, looking for signs of deception. His eyes remained steady on hers. How do I know the Blackwoods didn't send you to trick me? She demanded. Fair question. Daniel reached slowly into his jacket and pulled out a worn photograph. This is why. Emma took it reluctantly. The image showed a teenage boy with a young family, her family. Daniel as a gangly youth, arms slung around her father's shoulders, her mother holding toddler Emma on her hip. They stood before a freshly painted barn, faces bright with laughter. Your dad was the first person who ever believed I could be more than just the son of the town drunk, Daniel said quietly. He's the reason I finished high school, got a degree in environmental science, and your grandfather kept me employed all these years, helping him collect evidence. Something in his voice, raw sincerity or perhaps well-practiced deception, made Emma hesitate. The photograph looked genuine. And if her grandfather had trusted this man, if I show you the key, she said carefully, and it turns out you're lying to me, I'll make sure you regret it. Daniel's eyebrows rose slightly. Noted. Emma pulled the ornate key from her pocket, holding it just out of his reach. Is this what you're looking for? Relief washed over his features. Yes, thank God. I was afraid they might have found it first. They who? The Blackwoods were here? Alarm shot through her. Not yet, but they will be. That lawyer who called you, Meyer, she's their advance scout. Once she reports that you've taken possession, they'll be watching this place. He gestured to the window. We should move that car out of sight, by the way. And we need to get to the hidden room tonight, before they realize I'm here. Emma hesitated, weighing her options. Her instincts warned her not to trust this stranger, yet her curiosity about her grandfather's secrets pulled her forward. What if he was telling the truth? What if her parents' deaths weren't from natural causes? Fine, she decided. Show me this hidden room, but I'm bringing my phone, and if anything seems off, I'm calling the police. Daniel nodded. Fair enough. We'll need a flashlight. There's one in the kitchen drawer by the sink. Downstairs, Emma moved the rental car behind the barn while Daniel gathered supplies, flashlights, a backpack, work gloves. The rain had eased to a steady drizzle, but the darkness felt oppressive, the surrounding fields a black void beyond the weak porch light. This way, Daniel said, leading her toward the barn. Unlike the house, the barn showed signs of regular use. Farm equipment, though aged, appeared well maintained. Neat stacks of hay bales lined one wall, and the concrete floor was suspiciously clean for an abandoned building. He kept up appearances, Daniel explained, noting her surprise. Made it look like he was just a lonely old man puttering around his farm. Blackwood had people drive by regularly, watching from a distance. He moved to a section of wooden paneling at the back of the barn, running his fingers along the edge. The trick is knowing exactly where to push. Will designed it himself. With practiced precision, Daniel pressed a specific spot. A seam appeared where there had been none, and a section of wall silently swung inward. How is that possible? Emma whispered. It looks like solid wood from the outside. Your grandfather was clever. He reinforced the barn with new interior walls years ago, told everyone it was for structural integrity. Really, he was building this. Daniel aimed his flashlight through the opening, revealing a narrow passage. The hidden room is at the end of this hall. Emma hesitated at the threshold, suddenly aware of how completely she was putting her trust in this stranger. If this was a trap, Daniel seemed to read her thoughts. You go first, he offered, handing her the stronger flashlight. I'll follow. The passage was tight but not claustrophobic, the walls made of concrete rather than wood. After about 15 feet, they reached a heavy metal door with an antique-looking lock. This is it, Daniel said quietly. The key should fit here. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she inserted the ornate key. It turned with surprising ease, the mechanism clicking softly as the door unlocked. The room beyond was larger than she expected, perhaps 15 feet square. As their flashlight beam swept the space, Emma gasped. One wall was covered entirely in photographs, newspaper clippings, and maps, all connected by red string like something from a detective movie. Filing cabinets lined another wall, while a sturdy desk dominated the center, its surface buried under notebooks and folders. He dedicated his life to this, Daniel said softly. After your parents died, this became his mission. Emma approached the wall of evidence, her flashlight illuminating faces and headlines. Many of the photographs showed industrial equipment on farmland adjacent to her grandfather's property. Men in hazmat suits collecting samples, large metal containers being loaded onto trucks. Blackwood Industries began as a pesticide manufacturer, Daniel explained, moving to stand beside her. In the mid-90s, they started developing new compounds, supposedly safer, more effective, but they needed testing grounds. And they used the land here? Without permission? They owned the land 2 properties over. But chemicals don't respect property lines. Whatever they were testing leached into the groundwater, contaminated the soil. He pointed to a series of photographs showing dead birds, withered crops. Your grandfather started noticing wildlife die-offs first. Then the town festival happened. Emma's throat tightened as she spotted a news clipping about her parents' deaths. Their smiling faces stared back at her from a grainy photograph. Michael and Sarah Hayes, both 28, succumbed to complications from encephalitis yesterday at Pinewood Memorial Hospital. She read aloud, her voice barely audible. They are survived by their 3-year-old daughter, Emma. Daniel remained respectfully silent as she absorbed the impact of seeing her parents' obituary. Why didn't my grandfather pursue this legally? She finally asked. If he had all this evidence, he tried at first. Filed complaints with the EPA, contacted state authorities. But Blackwood's influence ran deep. Judges, politicians, even the local police. Then people started having accidents. Daniel pointed to another section of the wall where photographs of several individuals were marked with black X's. Carl Simmons, environmental inspector, car crash. Maria Delgado, lab technician who smuggled out test results, apparent suicide. Doctor, Lydia Park, who treated many of the victims, house fire. The implications chilled Emma to the bone. And my grandfather? Was his death also an accident? Daniel's expression darkened. Heart attack officially. But Will had been healthy as a horse. Regular checkups, no heart issues. It happened right after he told me he'd finally found something concrete linking Harrison Blackwood directly to the cover-up. What was it? Emma's gaze swept the cluttered room. I don't know. He was going to show me, but a sudden noise from outside the hidden passage made them both freeze. The unmistakable sound of the barn door sliding open. Daniel instantly switched off his flashlight, gesturing for Emma to do the same. In the perfect darkness, he leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. Someone's here, he whispered. And it's not a friendly visit. Your grandfather always kept that barn door well-oiled. Emma's heart thundered so loudly she was certain it would give them away. What do we do? She breathed. Before Daniel could answer, a beam of light swept across the barn outside their hiding place, and a man's voice cut through the silence. Spread out. Check everywhere. Myers says the Hayes woman arrived this afternoon, and Reeves's truck was spotted heading this way an hour ago. The voice was hard, authoritative. Mr. Blackwood wants this place secured before morning. Emma and Daniel exchanged alarmed glances in the darkness. They were trapped in the secret room, with armed men blocking their only exit. Emma could taste fear at the back of her throat, metallic and sharp. The darkness in the hidden room felt oppressive now, less a shield than a trap. Outside, flashlight beams crisscrossed the barn as heavy footsteps moved methodically through the space. 6 of them at least, Daniel whispered, his lips almost touching her ear. Professional security, not local muscle. How do you know? Emma breathed back. The way they move. The radio discipline. His hand found her arm, steadying her. We need to gather what we can and find another way out. There's another exit? Hope flickered briefly. No, but there's a plan B. Even in the darkness, she could sense his grim smile. Your grandfather was nothing if not thorough. Moving silently, Daniel guided her toward the desk. We need copies of the most critical documents. Use your phone. Photograph anything with Harrison Blackwood's name, especially from the last year. Emma fumbled for her phone, switching it to silent before activating the flashlight function at its lowest setting. The weak glow illuminated the desk's chaotic surface without penetrating to the door. As Daniel rifled through the filing cabinets with practiced efficiency, she began photographing documents. Most were technical, soil composition analyses, water quality reports filled with chemical symbols she didn't understand. But scattered among these were more disturbing items. Medical records of the victims, internal memos from Blackwood Industries stamped confidential, and copies of checks made out to various officials with cryptic notations in the memo lines. One folder contained a series of photographs taken with a telephoto lens, showing Harrison Blackwood himself, a tall, silver-haired man in an expensive suit, meeting with uniformed police officers beside an unmarked van. The date stamp showed it was taken just days after her parents' deaths. Daniel, she whispered urgently. Look at these! He glanced over, his expression tightening. That's the smoking gun we'll mention. Proof that Blackwood was directly involved in covering up the contamination. Outside, the voices grew louder. Nothing in the usual places, sir, someone reported. No sign of recent entry. They're here somewhere. The authoritative voice again. The woman's car is still warm. Check for hidden compartments, false walls, anything unusual. Daniel and Emma exchanged alarmed glances. It wouldn't take long for the searchers to discover the secret entrance. Time for Plan B, Daniel muttered, moving to a metal cabinet in the corner that Emma had assumed contained more files. Instead, when he opened it, she saw it held emergency supplies. Bottled water, energy bars, first aid kit, and, her stomach lurched, what appeared to be a homemade explosive device. Your grandfather was preparing for this day, Daniel explained, seeing her expression. He knew eventually they'd find this place. This is our distraction. You're going to blow up his evidence? Emma hissed incredulously. No. Daniel reached past the device to the back of the cabinet, where his fingers found and pressed a small button. With a soft hydraulic hiss, the entire back panel of the cabinet slid aside, revealing a narrow shaft with metal rungs embedded in the concrete. We're going to make them think we did. Outside, something heavy crashed to the floor. Check that panel again, the leader ordered. It looked too new compared to the rest of the barn. Daniel worked quickly, setting a timer on the device. This isn't actually powerful enough to destroy much, just create smoke and confusion. But it should cover our escape. He handed Emma a small waterproof bag. Put your phone and anything else electronic in here. Where the tunnel leads will be underwater briefly. Underwater? Emma felt panic rising but forced it down. Where does it go? The creek that runs along the back of the property, about a quarter mile from here. He helped her secure the bag inside her jacket. I'll go first. When you hear the explosion, count to 10, then follow. Don't hesitate. They'll have the room breached by then. Before she could respond, Daniel was already lowering himself into the shaft, disappearing from view with surprising speed. Emma stood frozen, overwhelmed by the rapid turn of events. 24 hours ago, she'd been in her Chicago apartment, her greatest concern a looming article deadline. Now she was in a hidden room full of conspiracy evidence, about to flee from armed men through an underwater tunnel. A sharp crack from outside snapped her back to attention. "There's something behind this panel," a voice called. "Get the pry bar." Emma grabbed a handful of the most damning-looking documents and stuffed them into her shirt, then positioned herself by the shaft, heart pounding. When the explosion came, it was less dramatic than she'd feared. A muffled whump followed by shouts of alarm and the acrid smell of smoke seeping through the doorway. She counted to 10, then lowered herself into the shaft. The climb down was terrifying, perhaps 20 feet of darkness, guided only by the feel of cold metal rungs against her palms. The shaft ended in a small chamber with ankle-deep water and a low concrete tunnel stretching into blackness. Emma hesitated, the sound of rushing water ahead triggering primal fears. "Daniel," she called softly. No answer came but the gurgle of flowing water. Taking a deep breath, she crouched and entered the tunnel, the ceiling so low she had to bend almost double. The concrete beneath her feet sloped downward, and soon the water reached her knees, then her waist. The air grew heavy with moisture, the walls slick with algae. After what seemed an eternity of hunched waiting, the tunnel opened into a wider chamber where the water pooled more deeply, reaching nearly to her shoulders. On the far side, perhaps 10 feet away, a grate admitted pale moonlight from above. Daniel stood waiting in the water, his outline barely visible. "Almost there," he encouraged. "The grate's unlocked, I just checked. When we go through, we'll be in the deepest part of the creek. It's about 15 feet to the bank. Can you swim?" Emma nodded, then realized he probably couldn't see her. "Yeah," she managed, teeth chattering from cold and fear. "Just follow me and try to stay quiet. They might have people watching the grounds." With that, he took a deep breath and disappeared beneath the surface. Emma did the same, fighting panic as the cold water closed over her head. She found the grate by touch, pushed through the opening Daniel had created, and kicked upward. The surface seemed impossibly far away. Her lungs burned for air, her sodden clothes dragging her down. Just as spots began dancing in her vision, her head broke the surface, and she gasped as quietly as she could, grateful for the rain that masked the sound. Daniel was already waiting toward the bank, gesturing urgently for her to follow. In the distance, emergency lights flashed at the farmhouse, and raised voices carried through the night air. By unspoken agreement, they stayed low in the water until they reached the muddy bank, where trees provided some cover. "This way," Daniel whispered, leading her into the woods that bordered the farm property. "I have a backup vehicle hidden about half a mile from here." They moved as quickly as the terrain allowed, slipping on wet leaves and tripping over hidden roots. Emma's wet clothes clung uncomfortably, and every shadow seemed to harbor danger. Behind them, the commotion at the farm intensified. More vehicles arriving, searchlights sweeping the fields. "They're bringing in reinforcements," Daniel observed grimly. "Blackwood must be desperate to contain this." "Why now?" Emma gasped, struggling to keep pace. "My grandfather collected this evidence for years." "What changed?" Daniel glanced back at her. "The lawsuit. Didn't you see the papers in the hidden room?" "What lawsuit?" She stumbled over a fallen branch, and Daniel caught her elbow, steadying her. "Your grandfather finally found a law firm willing to take on Blackwood Industries, Barrett and Chen out of Chicago. High-powered environmental attorneys with enough resources to withstand Blackwood's intimidation tactics. Will was scheduled to meet with them next week." His voice turned bitter. "I don't think his heart attack was a coincidence." The implications hit Emma like a physical blow. "You think they murdered him? Because of a potential lawsuit?" "I think Harrison Blackwood is killed before to protect his company, and the statute of limitations on the original incident is about to expire 25 years next month. It's now or never for justice." They reached the edge of the woods where a dirt access road cut through the trees. Concealed beneath a camouflage tarp was an ancient pickup truck, its once blue paint faded to a nondescript gray. "Not exactly an inconspicuous getaway vehicle," Emma commented as Daniel removed the cover. "In rural Illinois, an old truck is practically invisible," he replied, unlocking the driver's door. "Besides, it's registered to a fake name with a P.O. box address. Your grandfather taught me well." The truck started on the first try, its engine surprisingly quiet. Daniel kept the headlights off as they bumped along the access road, putting distance between themselves and the farm. "Where are we going?" Emma asked, teeth still chattering despite the truck's heater blasting at full strength. Somewhere they won't look for us. I have a friend who owns a hunting cabin about an hour from here. He cast a concerned glance her way. There's a duffel bag behind the seat with dry clothes. Not your size, but better than staying soaked. Emma reached back and found the bag, which contained men's clothing. Jeans, flannel shirts, thick socks. Your emergency kit? Your grandfather's, actually. He planned for every contingency. As Emma changed awkwardly in the cramped cab, trying to preserve some modesty, questions tumbled through her mind. What happens now? We can't just hide forever. I have a job, a life in Chicago. And the evidence. We only grabbed a fraction of what was in that room. Daniel kept his eyes fixed on the dark road ahead. The most important evidence is still safe. Your grandfather didn't keep all his eggs in one basket. What do you mean? The original soil and water samples, the most damning memos, the financial records showing the bribes. He had duplicates stored elsewhere. With a friend. You? Daniel shook his head. Someone even Blackwood wouldn't suspect. Someone with the credentials to make the scientific evidence hold up in court. Emma frowned, processing this information. So we have a chance? Even without the hidden room? We have more than a chance. We have the truth and the means to prove it. Daniel's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. But we also have a target on our backs now. Blackwood knows we have evidence that could destroy him. His people will be looking everywhere. How could he possibly know who I am or where to find me? Emma protested. I only arrived today. You underestimate his resources. By now, he's probably got someone watching your apartment in Chicago, monitoring your phone, checking your credit card activity, and scanning security cameras at every bus station, train station, and airport within 100 miles. Daniel's voice was matter-of-fact, not dramatic. This man has protected his secret for 25 years. He won't stop now. The reality of their situation washed over Emma like another wave of icy water. So I'm just supposed to disappear? Become a fugitive because of something my grandfather uncovered? Just until we can get the evidence to the right people, Daniel assured her. 2 days, maybe 3. Then Barrett and Shen can take over. File for court protection. Emma stared out at the rain-slick road unspooling in the truck's dim headlights. My whole life, she said quietly. I thought my grandfather abandoned my parents, abandoned me after they died. I resented him for 25 years. And now I find out he was trying to get justice for them all along, and it might have gotten him killed too. Daniel was silent for a long moment. He wanted to tell you the truth many times, but he was afraid they'd target you if you knew anything. Keeping you at a distance was the hardest thing he ever did. Emotion tightened Emma's throat. He died alone thinking I hated him. He died knowing he'd protected you, Daniel corrected gently, and hoping someday you'd understand. They drove in silence for several miles, each lost in thought. Eventually, the rain stopped, and a 3/4 moon emerged from the clouds, silvering the landscape. They turned onto progressively smaller roads, the last one barely more than a rutted trail leading deep into a stand of oak and hickory trees. The cabin, when they reached it, could scarcely be called such. A one-room structure with metal roof and weather-beaten siding. No other buildings were visible, no lights shone in the surrounding forest. Your friend won't mind us using this place? Emma asked as Daniel killed the engine. Frank's on a fishing trip in Manitoba. Won't be back for 2 weeks. He reached under the seat and pulled out a pistol Emma hadn't noticed before. Wait here while I check inside. She watched tensely as he approached the cabin, weapon ready. After a thorough inspection, he waved her in. The interior was basic but clean. A wood stove, a small kitchen area with propane stove, a table with 2 chairs and a full-size bed in one corner. Daniel immediately set about starting a fire in the wood stove, while Emma examined their refuge more closely. No electricity, she noted. Solar panels on the roof for basic needs. Lights, charging phones. There's a pump for water from the well out back, but it's not potable without boiling. He glanced up from arranging kindling. Not exactly the Ritz, but it's secure. Frank's paranoid about government surveillance. No one knows about this place except me. As warmth gradually filled the small space, Emma felt the adrenaline of their escape fading, replaced by bone-deep exhaustion. Questions still churned in her mind, but the events of the day crashed over her like a wave. Daniel seemed to notice. Take the bed, Kunai offered. I'll keep watch for a while, then sleep in the chair. Too tired to argue, Emma sank onto the surprisingly comfortable mattress. Despite her intention to stay alert, to process everything she'd learned, sleep claimed her almost instantly. She dreamed of her parents, not as the faded photographs she'd kept, but vivid and alive, standing in the farmhouse kitchen. Her father's laugh, her mother's gentle hands. They were trying to tell her something important, something urgent, but their voices were muffled, distant. "Emma." A hand shook her shoulder gently. "Emma, wake up." She opened her eyes to find Daniel leaning over her, his expression grave. Daylight filtered through the cabin's small windows, suggesting late morning. "What is it?" she asked, instantly alert. "I just checked the burner phone I keep here. There's news about the farm." He hesitated. "They're saying there was an explosion last night. A fire. The official story is that you accidentally set it off while tampering with old farm chemicals." Emma sat up, fully awake now. "They're blaming me? It gets worse. According to the local news website, you're wanted for questioning about potential arson. They're describing you as possibly armed and dangerous." "That's insane," Emma protested. "How can they—" "Blackwood owns the local media," Daniel reminded her grimly, "and he has friends in the sheriff's department. This is how they operate. Discredit anyone who threatens them." Emma pushed the tangled hair from her face, trying to think clearly. "So now I'm a fugitive for real," which is exactly what Blackwood wants. If you turn yourself in now, you'll be at their mercy, isolated, discredited, maybe even facing criminal charges. Daniel sat beside her on the edge of the bed. "But we have an advantage they don't know about." "What's that?" "Time. The Barrett and Chen meeting is still on the books, Wednesday at their Chicago office. Blackwood likely doesn't know about it. Will kept it very quiet. If we can make it there with the evidence, we'll have powerful allies," Emma calculated. "Today's Saturday. That means we need to stay hidden for 3 more days, then somehow get to Chicago without being caught." She shook her head. "It sounds impossible." "Not impossible. Challenging," Daniel smiled slightly. "And we have one more advantage. A witness he hasn't accounted for." "Who?" "Dr. Eleanor Chen of Barrett and Chen is actually Eleanor Chen Hayes, your grandfather's sister-in-law." "Your great-aunt." Emma stared at him. "What?" "I don't have a great-aunt, Eleanor." "You do, but your family lost touch with her decades ago. She changed her name professionally after marrying, went by Chen only. She's been helping your grandfather build this case from the shadows for years. She's the one who has the backup evidence." "Why wouldn't he tell me this?" "The same reason he kept you at a distance. To protect you." Daniel's expression softened. "But also because Eleanor asked him not to. She wanted to reveal herself to you when the time was right, when the case was finally filed." Emma felt as if the ground were shifting beneath her feet again. First her grandfather, now a great-aunt she'd never known existed. "Is there anything else about my family I should know?" Daniel's gaze dropped to his hands. "Your parents didn't just die from the chemical exposure, Emma. They were targeted because your father was helping gather evidence against Blackwood. He was an environmental science teacher at the high school. He noticed the pattern of illnesses first, started taking his own samples. So they were murdered? Deliberately?" The possibility, which she'd been avoiding facing directly, now crashed over her in a wave of grief and rage. The epidemic was an accident. Blackwood's test chemicals leaching into the groundwater after heavy rains. But your parents' death? "I believe that was deliberate contamination, yes. They received much higher doses than anyone else." He met her eyes. I'm sorry. I know this is overwhelming." Emma stood abruptly, needing to move, to process. She paced the small cabin, arms wrapped around herself. "All these years, I thought they just got sick. That it was bad luck, random chance." "It wasn't random," Daniel said quietly. "And now we have the chance to prove it." She turned to face him. "Then let's prove it. Tell me exactly what we need to do to get to Chicago by Wednesday." Something shifted in Daniel's expression. Respect, perhaps, or relief. "First, we need to contact Eleanor discreetly. Let her know what's happened. Then we need transportation that can't be traced and a route that avoids surveillance. And we need a way to clear my name," Emma added firmly. "I won't spend my life as a fugitive, even if we win against Blackwood." Daniel nodded slowly. "There might be a way to do both. But it's risky, and it means trusting someone else." "Who?" "Ryan Martinez. He's a journalist with the Chicago Tribune's investigative team. He's been looking into Blackwood Industries for years, but never had enough concrete evidence to publish." Daniel reached for his backpack and pulled out a satellite phone. "He's the one person outside of this who might believe us and have the resources to help." Emma considered this. Another stranger to trust. Another risk. But what choice did they have? "Call him," she decided. Daniel dialed, then put the phone on speaker. After 3 rings, a cautious male voice answered. "This is Martinez." "Ryan, it's Daniel Reeves. I'm with William Hayes' granddaughter. We have the evidence about Blackwood, but we're in trouble. We need your help." A long pause. "Jesus, Reeves. The police are looking for both of you. They're saying Hayes torched her grandfather's farm." "It's a frame job," Emma interjected. "My name is Emma Hayes. My grandfather collected evidence that Harrison Blackwood's company poisoned the groundwater in Pinewood 25 years ago, killing 12 people, including my parents. Now they're trying to silence us too." Another pause. "Can you prove any of this?" "Yes," Daniel answered. "But we need to get to Chicago safely by Wednesday to meet with the attorneys who are filing the case." "That's a big ask." Martinez sounded skeptical. "What exactly do you want from me?" "Safe passage," Daniel replied. "A place to stay where Blackwood can't find us. And your platform to tell the truth if something happens to us before Wednesday." The silence stretched so long that Emma wondered if they'd lost the connection. Finally, Martinez spoke again. "I can help with the safe house. Got a fishing buddy with a place off the grid. As for the rest, if your evidence checks out, I'll publish everything, promise or no promise. But I need to see what you've got first." Emma met Daniel's eyes. Could they trust this man? Did they have a choice? "We'll show you," she said finally. "But not over the phone. When can we meet?" "Not in Chicago. Too risky right now. There's a truck stop on I-55 just south of Bloomington. I can be there at midnight." Daniel covered the phone's microphone with his hand. "It's about 3 hours from here," he whispered to Emma. "Public enough to be relatively safe, remote enough to avoid too many surveillance cameras." Emma nodded. "We'll be there," she told Martinez. After arranging recognition signals, they ended the call. Daniel immediately began gathering their meager supplies. "We should move locations before nightfall," he explained. "Standard security protocol. Never stay in one place too long." "Where to?" Emma asked, already dreading another cold, uncomfortable journey. "I know a place about an hour west of here. Old hunting blind deep in the state forest. We can rest there until it's time to meet Martinez." As they prepared to leave, Emma found herself examining Daniel more carefully. In the daylight, she noticed details missed in the chaos of the previous night. A thin scar running along his jawline, the calloused hands of someone who worked with them regularly. The watchful alertness in his gaze that suggested years spent looking over his shoulder. "Why did you stay?" she asked suddenly. "All these years helping my grandfather with a fight that wasn't yours. You could have left, built a normal life somewhere else." Daniel paused in packing the truck, his expression thoughtful. "Because your father believed in me when no one else did. Because your grandfather showed me that one person standing up for the truth matters, even when the odds seem impossible." He shrugged, as if embarrassed by his own sincerity. "And because someone had to be the witness. Someone had to remember." "Thank you," Emma said quietly, "for being that person." Their eyes met briefly, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Then Daniel closed the truck's tailgate with a decisive thud. "We should go," he said. "We've got a long drive ahead of us, and a lot of work to do if we're going to take down Harrison Blackwood." The truck stop loomed like an island of harsh fluorescence in the midnight darkness of Interstate 55. Emma watched from the passenger seat as Daniel circled the parking lot once, scanning methodically for anything suspicious. A dozen semis idled in the back lot, their drivers presumably asleep in cabs or inside the diner. A few passenger cars dotted the spaces near the entrance, but nothing suggested a trap. "See that blue sedan by the side entrance?" Daniel nodded toward a nondescript vehicle. "That's Martinez's car. I recognize it from previous meetings." Emma's stomach knotted with tension. What if he's not alone? What if they forced him to set us up? "That's why I'm going in first." "You stay with the truck, engine running." Daniel handed her the keys. "If I don't come out in 10 minutes, or if I give any signal that something's wrong, drive away. Head for the address I wrote down. Eleanor will help you." "I'm not leaving you," Emma protested. Daniel's expression softened slightly. "I appreciate the sentiment, but the evidence is what matters. Your parents, your grandfather, they died trying to expose the truth. Don't let that be for nothing." Before she could argue further, he was out of the truck, moving with casual purpose toward the diner. Emma watched him through the windshield, one hand on the ignition key, the other clutching the satellite phone. The minutes crept by with excruciating slowness. Inside her pocket, the documents she'd taken from the hidden room crinkled whenever she shifted position. What had seemed like a random handful in the moment of crisis now represented their only tangible evidence. Everything else was destroyed or in Eleanor Chen's possession. 8 minutes passed. Emma's tension ratcheted higher with each passing second. Just as she was about to start the engine, the diner's side door opened and Daniel emerged, accompanied by a stocky man with salt and pepper hair and a worn leather jacket. Daniel gave a subtle nod, the all-clear signal, and gestured for her to join them. Heart pounding, Emma made her way across the parking lot, hyper-aware of the security cameras mounted on the building's corners. Inside, the diner was nearly empty. A lone trucker nursing coffee at the counter, a waitress refilling salt shakers at a back table. Daniel led her to a corner booth where Martinez had already settled. Emma Hayes, Daniel made the introduction. Ryan Martinez, Chicago Tribune. The journalist studied her with shrewd eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. You look like your father, he said finally. I covered the Pinewood epidemic as a rookie reporter. Never sat right with me, but I couldn't prove anything was off. You knew my father? Emma asked, sliding into the booth. Martinez nodded. Not well, but he was one of my sources. Anonymously, of course. Smart man, asking questions nobody wanted answered. His gaze shifted to Daniel. So let's see what you've got. Emma hesitated, then reached into her pocket and withdrew the documents, now creased and faintly damp from their underwater escape. Martinez spread them on the table, shielding them from view with his body as he examined each one carefully. Jesus, he muttered as he studied a particular memo. This is Harrison Blackwood's signature authorizing the night dumping when containment failed at the test site. And this, he tapped another document, is the falsified water quality report they submitted to the EPA. His eyes lifted to meet Emma's. This is the real deal. There's more, Daniel said quietly. Soil samples, medical reports that were altered, financial records showing payments to officials. Eleanor Chen has them. Martinez whistled softly. Eleanor Chen of Barrett and Chen. She's involved in this. She's my great aunt, apparently, Emma said. My grandfather's secret ally all these years. The journalist leaned back, processing this information. This is Pulitzer material. Corporate malfeasance, government corruption, a multi-decade cover-up involving multiple deaths. His expression turned grave, which is exactly why Blackwood will do anything to keep it buried. Can you help us? Emma asked directly. Martinez considered for a long moment, then nodded. I've been trying to nail Blackwood for years. My editor thinks I'm obsessed. He gathered the documents carefully. I'll need to verify these, make some calls discreetly. Then I'll arrange the safe house. But not tonight. Too risky to move right now with authorities looking for you. We have a temporary shelter, Daniel said. We can hold there until tomorrow. Good. Meet me at this address tomorrow at 3 p.m. Martinez scribbled on a napkin. It's a storage facility outside Joliet. I'll have transportation arranged to get you to the safe house. He eyed them critically. And some better disguises. You two stick out like sore thumbs in those clothes. As they prepared to leave separately, Martinez put a hand on Emma's arm. For what it's worth, I believed your father when nobody else did. I tried to help him, but I was too green. Didn't have the resources or reputation to push the story through. You can help us now, Emma said simply. I intend to. His expression hardened. Blackwood's political donations doubled this year. He's positioning for a major expansion, maybe even eyeing appointed office. The timing of your grandfather's heart attack makes a lot more sense now. They parted ways in the parking lot, Martinez leaving first, while Emma and Daniel waited a cautious 15 minutes before driving away in the opposite direction. The rain had returned, slashing against the windshield in wind-driven sheets. Can we trust him? Emma asked as they merged onto the deserted highway. As much as we can trust anyone right now, Daniel replied. Martinez has been investigating Blackwood for years, built his reputation on corporate accountability stories, and he was genuinely shocked by those documents. But, Daniel glanced at her, but everyone has pressure points. Family, career, finances. If Blackwood discovers he's helping us, Emma stared out at the rain-washed darkness. More people at risk because of my grandfather's crusade. Because of Blackwood's crimes, Daniel corrected firmly. Don't shift the blame to the wrong place. They drove in silence for several miles, the rhythmic sweep of the wipers marking time. Eventually, Daniel turned onto a series of progressively smaller roads until they reached the state forest he'd mentioned earlier. The hunting blind proved to be little more than a wooden platform with a rudimentary roof concealed among the trees. At least it was dry, if not particularly comfortable. We should rest while we can, Daniel advised, spreading a tarp on the wooden floor. Tomorrow will be challenging. Despite her exhaustion, Emma found sleep elusive. Her mind raced with questions, connections forming between scattered pieces of information. Daniel had fallen into a light doze, his back against a wooden post, hands still near the pistol he'd placed within reach. "You never really sleep, do you?" she asked softly, noticing his eyelids flutter at her voice. "Not deeply." "Not for years." He shifted position slightly. "Your grandfather was the same way after your parents died. Always listening, always watching. What was he like? Really like? I mean, not the bitter old man I imagine." Daniel's eyes opened fully, his expression thoughtful in the dim glow of their battery-powered lantern. Brilliant. Methodical. He could have been a renowned environmental scientist if he'd chosen that path. Instead, he dedicated his intellect to building this case. A faint smile touched his lips. He was funny too, in a dry way. Had these terrible puns he'd drop when you least expected. Emma tried to reconcile this description with the distant figure she'd constructed in her mind. He never reached out. Not once in 25 years. He tried in his way. Followed your career obsessively. Had every article you ever published in a scrapbook. Watched your journalism award acceptance speech online so many times he wore out the DVD. Daniel's voice grew quieter. He was proud of you, Emma. Proud that you became a truth teller, even without his influence. The simple words pierced something in Emma's chest. A knot of resentment she'd carried so long, it had become part of her identity. "I wish I'd known him," she whispered. "You're a lot like him," Daniel observed. Same stubborn determination. Same inability to let an injustice stand. Dawn arrived with watery light filtering through the trees and the sounds of forest life stirring around them. They ate a sparse breakfast of energy bars from the emergency supplies, then spent the morning reviewing their plan, meticulously accounting for contingencies. "If anything goes wrong at the meeting point," Daniel explained, "we separate and make our way individually to Eleanor's. She's expecting us either way by tonight." "And if I can't make it there," Emma pressed. "If they catch me," Daniel's expression turned grim. "Deny everything. Say I kidnapped you, fed you a conspiracy story. They'll believe that. It fits their narrative of an unhinged environmental extremist manipulating an innocent relative." "That's not fair to you," Emma protested. "This isn't about fair. It's about getting the evidence to Barrett and Chen. Your safety is more important than my reputation." The hours ticked by with agonizing slowness. They left the hunting blind shortly after noon, taking a circuitous route toward Joliet. Daniel remained vigilant, checking regularly for signs of pursuit, while Emma scanned local news on the burner phone's limited internet browser. "They've expanded the search," she reported grimly. "State police have joined the effort. They're calling me disturbed and potentially violent. They're saying I might be held against my will by a known associate of the deceased." "Standard tactics," Daniel replied, though his knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Discredit the witness. Control the narrative." The storage facility Martinez had selected was on the outskirts of Joliet, isolated enough to avoid casual observation, but not so remote as to draw attention. They arrived 20 minutes early, parking behind an abandoned gas station half a mile away to survey the area for signs of a trap. "Looks clear," Daniel decided after observing through binoculars. "One entrance, one exit. Martinez's car is already there by Unit 23, and I don't see any other vehicles lingering nearby." They approached cautiously nonetheless, Daniel's hand never far from the concealed pistol. Martinez was waiting beside his car, tension evident in his posture until he recognized them. "You made good time," he greeted them, unlocking a roll-up storage door. "Let's get inside quickly." The unit contained not the expected boxes and furniture, but a rusty panel van with magnetic signs for Valley Plumbing and Heating on its sides. "Your transportation," Martinez explained, "borrowed from a friend who's out of town. Completely untraceable to me or you." He handed Daniel a set of keys. "And these are for the safe house. It's a lake cabin about 2 hours north of Chicago, near the Wisconsin border. Belongs to my brother-in-law, but he never uses it this time of year." From a duffel bag, he produced work uniforms, caps, and ID badges. "Your disguises. Nothing fancy, but enough to get you past casual observation. The IDs won't hold up to police scrutiny, but they're fine for gas stations and drive-thrus." "Thank you," Emma said sincerely, examining the ID with her photo, clearly taken from her newspaper staff profile, and a false name. Martinez waved away her gratitude. "I've been making some calls, very careful ones. There's something bigger happening with Blackwood Industries." He pulled out his tablet and showed them a series of recently filed permits and land acquisition records. "They're positioning for a massive expansion in Pinewood and the surrounding counties. Water rights, mineral rights, hundreds of acres changing hands in the past month alone. Daniel frowned. Why now after all these years? Lithium, Martinez said simply. Initial geological surveys suggest there may be significant lithium deposits in the area, critical for electric vehicle batteries, electronics, the whole green economy. If Blackwood controls those deposits, we're talking billions, not millions. Emma connected the dots immediately. And if our lawsuit reveals environmental contamination, exactly. No permits, no mining rights, no billions. Martinez's expression was grim. The timing of your grandfather's death suddenly makes perfect sense. We need to get this evidence to Eleanor Chen immediately, Daniel said urgently. If Blackwood is accelerating his plans, he might move against her too. I've tried contacting her office discreetly, Martinez admitted. Their security protocols are tight, no messages accepted without proper vetting. Your in-person meeting Wednesday is still your best option. They transferred their meager possessions to the van and changed into the workman disguises. As they prepared to leave, Martinez handed Emma a sealed envelope. What's this? She asked. Insurance. I've written up everything I know about the case, included copies of the documents you showed me, and statements about meeting you both. It's addressed to my editor with instructions to publish if anything happens to me or if I don't check in every 12 hours. He met her eyes steadily. I'm also working on a background piece about Blackwood's expansion plans and your grandfather's suspicious death. Nothing inflammatory enough to alert Blackwood, but groundwork for what's coming. You're putting yourself at considerable risk, Daniel observed. Martinez shrugged. Occupational hazard. Besides, I owe it to your father. He checked his watch. You should get moving. Stay on the back roads as much as possible. I've marked a route on this map that avoids most traffic cameras and police checkpoints. As they pulled away in the plumbing van, Emma watched Martinez's diminishing figure in the side mirror. Another ally in their dangerous mission, another person at risk. He didn't have to help us, she said quietly. Some people still believe in justice, Daniel replied, navigating the van through Joliet's industrial outskirts. Your grandfather used to say that was the one thing Blackwood could never eliminate, the human conscience. There would always be people who couldn't be bought or intimidated. They followed Martinez's suggested route, keeping to secondary highways and county roads. The disguises proved their worth at a gas station where the attendant barely glanced at them. Just another service van making rounds. As twilight descended, they crossed into the northern suburbs of Chicago. Traffic thickened, increasing their anxiety, but the plumbing van blended seamlessly with the stream of service vehicles heading home after the workday. We're close now, Daniel said, checking the address Eleanor had provided. Another 20 minutes, assuming no complications. The words had barely left his mouth when blue lights flashed in their mirror. A police cruiser had pulled in behind them, signal lights demanding they pull over. Routine stop or looking for us specifically? Emma asked, heart pounding. Daniel checked the mirrors carefully. Single officer, no backup visible. Could be random. He pulled the van to the shoulder. Dude, don't panic. Remember our cover story. Plumbers heading to an emergency call. Let me do the talking. The officer approached cautiously on the driver's side. Average height, middle age, name badge reading Collins. Nothing about his demeanor suggested a targeted stop. License and registration, he requested routinely. Daniel handed over the fake documents Martinez had provided. His manner relaxed despite the tension Emma could sense coiled within him. What's the problem, officer? He asked casually. Taillights out, Collins replied, examining the license. Where are you folks headed this evening? Emergency call in Lake Bluff, Daniel answered. If church, burst pipe flooding a basement, homeowners frantic. The officer nodded, seemingly satisfied, then paused as his radio crackled. He stepped back to his vehicle, speaking quietly into his shoulder mic while keeping his eyes on their van. Something's wrong, Daniel muttered. He's calling in the license. Martinez's documents won't hold up to that level of scrutiny. Emma watched in the side mirror as the officer's posture changed subtly. More alert, hand drifting toward his weapon. What do we do? When I give the word, slide into the driver's seat and go. The address is in the GPS. Don't stop for anything. What about you? I'll create a diversion. Buy you time. His voice was calm, matter of fact. Eleanor is expecting us by 9. Make sure you're there. Before Emma could protest, the officer returned, his manner now cautious, one hand resting on his holstered weapon. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Is there a problem? Daniel asked innocently. Just step out slowly, sir. The officer's voice hardened. Both of you, hands where I can see them. Daniel turned to Emma, his expression intense. Go. he whispered. Then in a fluid motion that took both Emma and the officer by surprise, he shoved open the door, knocking the policeman backward. "Drive!" he shouted as he leapt from the van, drawing the officer's attention away from Emma. Operating on instinct and adrenaline, Emma scrambled into the driver's seat and slammed the accelerator. The van lurched forward as shouts erupted behind her. In the rearview mirror, she caught a glimpse of Daniel grappling with the officer before both disappeared from view as she rounded a curve. Hands shaking, breath coming in gasps, Emma forced herself to focus on the road ahead. The navigation system indicated Eleanor's address was 15 miles away. 15 miles of vulnerability alone, with no one to watch her back. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Whether for her or for Daniel, she couldn't tell. Either way, their carefully constructed plan was unraveling. She took the next turn sharply, deviating from the main route to wind through residential streets. "Think, Emma, think," she muttered to herself. The plumbing van was now a liability, too easily identified, probably already reported. She needed an alternative. A shopping center appeared ahead, its parking lot still busy with evening customers. Emma pulled in, parking the van between two SUVs at the far end of the lot. She grabbed their essential supplies, stuffed them into a backpack, and abandoned the vehicle, walking briskly toward the main entrance as if she belonged there. Inside the mall, she ducked into a department store's restroom and quickly changed out of the plumber's uniform into civilian clothes from the backpack. She discarded the cap and fake ID in a trash can, then made her way to the shopping center's opposite exit. Transportation was her next challenge. Public transit would be monitored if a serious search was underway. Rideshare services required apps and credit cards that could be traced. A taxi, perhaps? But even that carried risks. As she hesitated near the exit, a church van pulled up. North Shore Community Chapel emblazoned on its side. A middle-aged woman emerged, checking her watch with a harried expression. Emma made a split-second decision and approached her. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you heading north by any chance? My car broke down, and I really need to get to Lake Bluff tonight." The woman looked startled, then sympathetic. "We're going to Lincolnshire for our youth group meeting. That's about halfway to Lake Bluff. You're welcome to ride along that far." Relief flooded through Emma. "That would be incredible. Thank you so much." As she climbed into the van filled with chattering teenagers, Emma sent up a silent prayer for Daniel. Had he escaped? Been arrested? Worse? There was no way to know. Her only option was to continue forward, reach Eleanor, and hope Daniel would find his way to them. The youth group, assuming she was a parent volunteer, barely paid her any attention. Emma maintained a facade of calm, making appropriate small talk, while her mind raced with contingency plans. When they reached Lincolnshire an hour later, she thanked the group and departed at a strip mall. Lake Bluff was still several miles away. Night had fallen completely now, a gibbous moon occasionally visible through scudding clouds. Emma began walking, staying on side streets, using the map function on the burner phone sparingly to conserve its battery. She had covered perhaps a mile when a police cruiser rolled slowly past. Emma ducked her head, turning as if examining a store window, but the damage was done. The cruiser slowed, then made a U-turn. Panic surged. She was exposed, alone, with nowhere to hide on the suburban street. The cruiser pulled alongside her, its window lowering. "Miss," the officer called. "Can I have a word?" Emma's mind raced. Run? No, that would only confirm suspicion. Fight? Absurd. Her only option was to bluff. She approached the cruiser, manufacturing a confused smile. "Yes, officer. You all right out here? It's pretty late to be walking alone." "Oh, yes," she said quickly. "Just heading to my friend's house." "It's not far." The officer studied her face, and Emma felt cold sweat breaking out on her forehead. Had her photo been circulated to all law enforcement? Did he recognize her? "Would you like a ride?" he offered finally. "It's not the safest area after dark." "No, thank you. I enjoy the walk. Clearing my head, you know." He nodded slowly. "Can I see some ID, miss?" "Just routine. This was it." Emma had no valid ID to present, only the fake one she'd discarded, or her real driver's license that would immediately identify her as the fugitive being sought. Just as she was fumbling for an excuse, destiny intervened in the form of a multi-car accident at the intersection ahead. Lights flashed, horns blared, and someone shouted for help. The officer's head snapped toward the commotion. "Wait right here," he instructed automatically before accelerating toward the scene, already calling in the accident on his radio. Emma didn't hesitate. The moment the cruiser pulled away, she darted down a side street, then cut through several backyards, putting as much distance as possible between herself and the officer, who would soon discover she hadn't waited as instructed. For nearly an hour, she navigated through the suburban maze, staying in shadows, avoiding main streets. Her journalist training in urban exploration proved unexpectedly valuable as she oriented herself without relying on the phone's GPS. Finally, exhausted and frayed with tension, she reached the address Eleanor had provided. A stately colonial-style house set back from the road, surrounded by mature trees. No obvious security measures were visible, but Emma suspected they existed nonetheless. She approached cautiously, examining the property from the cover of neighboring shrubbery. Lights shone warmly from several windows. A single car, a silver Lexus, sat in the circular driveway. Nothing suggested danger or surveillance. Taking a deep breath, Emma approached the front door and rang the bell. Moments later, footsteps approached from within. The door opened to reveal a petite Asian American woman in her 70s, elegant in a simple black sweater and slacks. Her shrewd eyes assessed Emma instantly. "You must be Emma," she said in a surprisingly strong voice. "I've been waiting for you." Her gaze shifted past Emma to the empty driveway. "Where is Daniel?" "There was trouble," Emma explained, emotion threatening to overwhelm her now that she'd reached safety. "Police stopped us. He created a diversion so I could escape. I don't know what happened to him." Eleanor's expression tightened with concern, but she maintained her composure. Come inside quickly. We must assume they're not far behind." The house's interior was tastefully appointed, but gave the impression of a temporary residence rather than a permanent home. Few personal items were visible, the furniture practical rather than sentimental. "Secure location," Eleanor explained, noticing Emma's assessment. "One of several I maintain. Digital security, physical countermeasures, untraceable to my public identity." She gestured Emma further inside. "I was beginning to fear you wouldn't make it." "It was close," Emma admitted, following her great-aunt into what appeared to be a home office. "The police are everywhere. They nearly caught me twice." "Blackwood is pulling every string he has," Eleanor confirmed grimly. "But he's also growing careless in his desperation. Making mistakes." She indicated a wall of monitors displaying news feeds, legal documents, and surveillance footage of what Emma recognized as her grandfather's farm, now a blackened ruin surrounded by police tape. His attempt to destroy the evidence has only drawn more attention to what he's trying to hide. Emma stared at the destroyed farm, a fresh wave of grief washing over her. "All my grandfather's work?" "Not all," Eleanor corrected, moving to a concealed safe behind a painting. She entered a complex combination and removed several external hard drives and a thick binder of documents. William was methodical. He kept duplicate records in multiple locations. "And the most damning evidence," she patted the binder, "has been in my possession for years." "The soil samples? The medical reports?" Eleanor nodded. "And more. Financial transactions linking Harrison Blackwood directly to bribes paid to local officials. Internal memos acknowledging the contamination and ordering its concealment. Even DNA analysis connecting the specific chemical compound found in the victim's tissues to Blackwood's proprietary formula." Hope surged in Emma's chest. "Ah, then we have enough? Even without Daniel or the evidence from the hidden room?" "We have enough to file the lawsuit and secure an injunction against Blackwood's expansion plans," Eleanor confirmed. "But to win, to really bring him to justice, we need witnesses. People willing to testify to what they saw and experienced." Her expression softened. "People like you, Emma. And Daniel." The mention of Daniel brought reality crashing back. We need to help him. If he's been arrested..." "I've already made inquiries through secure channels," Eleanor assured her. "No reports of his arrest have appeared in any police database. That could mean he escaped, is being held unofficially, or..." She left the worst possibility unspoken. "He's alive," Emma said firmly, surprised by her own certainty. "He's survived this long against Blackwood. He'll find a way to reach us." Eleanor studied her curiously. "You've come to trust him quickly. He saved my life, multiple times. And he was loyal to my grandfather for 25 years when there was nothing in it for him but danger." "Daniel Reeves is a remarkable young man," Eleanor agreed. "Did he tell you how he first became involved with all this?" Emma shook her head. "His mother was one of the victims. Not a fatality, but severely affected neurologically. She lives in assisted care to this day. Daniel was just 15 when it happened, working summers at your grandfather's farm." Eleanor's gaze turned distant. "William became a father figure to him after the incident. Paid for his college education, his graduate studies in environmental science, helped him establish a consulting business that served as cover for their investigation. This new information settled like a weight on Emma's conscience. Another life devastated by Blackwood's crimes. Another reason Daniel had to see this through, regardless of personal cost. "We need to find him," she insisted. "And we will," Eleanor assured her. "But first you need rest. You're running on adrenaline and determination, but neither will sustain you indefinitely." She led Emma to a well-appointed guest room. "Tomorrow we'll implement the contingency plan William created years ago, the final phase of exposing Blackwood's crimes." At the doorway, she paused. "You have your grandfather's resilience, Emma. He would be proud of what you've done these past 2 days." Left alone, Emma sank onto the bed, the events of the past 48 hours crashing over her like a physical wave. From reluctant heir to fugitive, from resentful granddaughter to crusader for justice, her entire identity had transformed in ways she was only beginning to comprehend. And somewhere out there was Daniel, captured, hiding, or searching for a way to reach them. The thought of him facing Blackwood's forces alone gnawed at her. Against all reason, in the midst of chaos and danger, she had come to rely on his steady presence, his unwavering commitment to the truth. As exhaustion finally claimed her, Emma's last conscious thought was a silent promise to her parents and grandfather. Blackwood would answer for his crimes. Justice, so long deferred, would finally be served. Emma woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and the scent of coffee wafting from somewhere nearby. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then the events of the past 2 days crashed back into her consciousness. The farm, the hidden room, the escape, Daniel's capture. She sat up quickly, adrenaline surging anew. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, a steaming mug in her hand. "Owen. Good morning. I thought you might need this." She offered the coffee. "We have a challenging day ahead." "Any word about Daniel?" Emma asked immediately, accepting the mug with grateful hands. "Nothing definitive. No arrest records have appeared in any system I can access." Eleanor's expression remained carefully neutral. "But there's been unusual activity at the Blackwood estate outside Pinewood. Security has doubled overnight, and several unmarked vehicles have been coming and going." Emma's stomach tightened. "You think they're holding him there? Privately? It's a possibility we need to consider. Harrison Blackwood has operated outside the law for decades. Why would he start respecting legal niceties now?" The implications chilled Emma. If Daniel wasn't in official custody, there would be no Miranda rights, no attorney access, no due process of any kind. "We need to help him," she insisted, setting aside the coffee and standing. "And we will," Eleanor assured her. "But first we need to secure the evidence and file the lawsuit. That's our leverage, the only thing that might protect Daniel at this point." The older woman gestured for Emma to follow her to the home office, where multiple monitors displayed various news feeds, legal documents, and surveillance footage. One screen showed a live news report from the remains of the Hayes farm. "The arson allegations against you have intensified," Eleanor informed her. "They're portraying you as a mentally unstable woman manipulated by an eco-terrorist, Daniel, into destroying evidence of your grandfather's own environmental crimes." "What?" Emma stared at the screen in disbelief. A somber newscaster stood before the charred remains of the barn, speaking gravely about disturbing new information regarding William Hayes' activities. "They're claiming soil samples found on the property show your grandfather was actually responsible for the contamination 25 years ago, that he ran illegal chemical experiments that caused the illness outbreak, then spent decades fabricating evidence to blame Blackwood Industries." Eleanor's voice was clinically detached, but her eyes blazed with controlled anger. "It's an elegant strategy. Discredit William, discredit you, eliminate any sympathy for Daniel, and protect themselves from liability all at once." "That's insane," Emma protested. "No one who knew my grandfather would believe that. Most people who knew him are dead, Emma." "That's not coincidental." Eleanor switched off the newsfeed. "Blackwood has controlled the narrative in Pinewood for 25 years. The remaining residents are either on his payroll or too afraid to speak out." Emma paced the room, mind racing. "So what's our plan? How do we counter this?" With overwhelming evidence and multiple credible voices, Eleanor opened her laptop. Ryan Martinez has been laying groundwork with a series of seemingly unrelated articles. One about the suspicious timing of property acquisitions around Pinewood, another about historical environmental testing practices, a third examining the statistical anomalies in cancer rates in certain Illinois counties. None directly accusing Blackwood, Emma noted, reading over her shoulder. "Precisely. building context without triggering their legal team. Eleanor clicked to another screen displaying a legal filing. Meanwhile, my firm has prepared a comprehensive legal filing, not just a civil suit for damages, but a request for emergency injunction to halt all Blackwood operations in the area, plus a formal request for criminal investigation. She turned to face Emma directly. What we don't have is William's final piece of evidence. He told me repeatedly that he had discovered something that would leave no doubt of Harrison Blackwood's personal culpability, something even Blackwood's political connections couldn't neutralize. Emma's mind flashed back to the hidden room, Daniel's words echoing in her memory. Will had been healthy as a horse. It happened right after he told me he'd finally found something concrete, linking Harrison Blackwood directly to the cover-up. Did he ever give you any indication what that evidence might be? She asked. Eleanor shook her head. He was being deliberately cautious. Said he would show me when the time was right. A shadow of grief crossed her composed features. Then he died before he could reveal it. Emma paced, mind racing. It has to be somewhere we haven't looked. Somewhere even Blackwood's people wouldn't think to search. She stopped suddenly. The key. What key? There was a key hidden with the documents under the floorboard. Ornate, almost medieval looking. It opened the hidden room in the barn, but Emma hesitated, remembering the weight of it in her hand. It seemed too elaborate for just a storage room. And there was something familiar about its design. Eleanor's eyes widened slightly. Do you still have it? Emma patted her pockets, then felt a surge of relief as her fingers closed around the metal object. Yes, I've kept it with me. She placed the key on Eleanor's desk. The older woman examined it carefully, then reached for a magnifying glass to study the intricate patterns engraved on its surface. This isn't just decorative, she murmured. These markings, she traced them with a fingertip. They're a stylized version of the Pinewood Town seal from the 1950s. Before the redesign, why would my grandfather have a key with the old town seal? Emma wondered aloud. Eleanor's expression sharpened with sudden comprehension. The town hall records room. William mentioned years ago that he discovered the original architectural plans showed a secure archive in the basement, supposedly for protecting vital records during the Cold War. But it was sealed off during renovations in the 1980s. And my grandfather found a way in, Emma concluded. Somewhere hidden enough that even when Blackwood's people searched the farm, they never found what they were looking for. It makes perfect sense, Eleanor agreed, excitement animating her usually composed demeanor. A public building, protected by security systems, with legitimate reasons for William to visit as a concerned citizen. He could access his hidden evidence without raising suspicions. But how do we get to it? Emma pointed out. I'm a fugitive, remember? I can't exactly walk into Pinewood Town Hall and start exploring the basement. Eleanor smiled thinly. That's where our allies come in. Ryan Martinez has press credentials that will get him access to public buildings for his historical research article. And I have a legal right to inspect town records as part of our preparation for filing. You'd risk going to Pinewood yourself? Emma asked incredulously. If Blackwood realizes who you are, Harrison Blackwood and I have never met, Eleanor replied calmly. He's aware of Barrett and Chen as adversaries, but not of my personal connection to this case. My legal credentials are impeccable, and attempting to interfere with an attorney conducting legitimate research would only strengthen our case. She began gathering documents into a sleek leather briefcase. I've already arranged for filing our lawsuit this afternoon. With the media attention Martinez has been building, it will create the perfect diversion for our record search. And if Daniel is being held at the Blackwood estate, Emma pressed, what about him? Eleanor's expression softened slightly. I've made certain contingency arrangements. An associate of mine, a former client with particular skills, is monitoring the situation. If we confirm Daniel is there, we have options. She checked her watch. But time is critical. The filing goes public at 2 p.m. We need to be in Pinewood by noon to maximize our window of opportunity. Within the hour, they were on the road in Eleanor's Lexus, taking a circuitous route to avoid major highways where police presence would be heavier. Emma wore a disguise carefully crafted from Eleanor's resources. Hair dyed and styled differently, glasses, makeup that subtly altered her facial structure, and conservative business attire that transformed her into the very image of a junior legal assistant. The best disguise is one that doesn't draw attention, Eleanor explained as they drove. You look exactly like what people expect to see, a young professional accompanying a senior attorney. No one looks twice at the expected. Emma studied her great-aunt with newfound appreciation. The elegant, composed woman beside her clearly possessed depths of strategic thinking and practical tradecraft that went far beyond typical legal expertise. "You've done this before," she observed. "Operated in hostile territory, I mean." Eleanor's lips curved in a small smile. "Barrett and Chen specializes in environmental justice cases against powerful entities. Sometimes that requires unorthodox approaches to gathering evidence. Your grandfather wasn't the only one developing skills over the past 25 years. The transformation of Pinewood was evident as they approached the town. What had been a struggling rural community 2 days ago now bustled with activity. Construction vehicles, surveyors with equipment, and temporary offices bearing the Blackwood Industries logo. "They're not wasting any time," Eleanor noted grimly as they passed a billboard announcing Pinewood Revival Project, building a sustainable future. "They know we're coming," Emma realized. "This is damage control. Create enough jobs and economic activity that the locals will defend Blackwood against any accusations. A standard tactic and effective in depressed communities desperate for economic revitalization." Eleanor navigated through the town center, which had been hastily decorated with banners and signs promoting the development project. But it only works when people don't know the full cost. They parked a block from the town hall, a stately brick building that had clearly once been the pride of Pinewood, though years of budget cuts had left it in need of repair. As they approached the entrance, Emma spotted Ryan Martinez already inside, speaking with a middle-aged woman at the reception desk. Eleanor led the way, her professional demeanor commanding immediate respect. "Good morning," she greeted the receptionist. "I'm Eleanor Chen of Barrett and Chen Legal Services. I called ahead regarding access to the Public Records Archive for research purposes." The woman, whose nameplate identified her as M. Jenkins, town clerk, smiled nervously. "Yes, Ms. Chen. Mr. Holloway from Blackwood Industries mentioned you might be stopping by." She glanced at Martinez, then back to Eleanor. "He asked if you could wait until he arrives to escort you to the records room." "That won't be necessary," Eleanor replied smoothly. "As an officer of the court, I have statutory right to unimpeded access to public records during business hours. My assistant and I," she gestured to Emma, "will require privacy for our research. Mr. Martinez is conducting his own separate investigation for the Tribune." Jenkins hesitated, clearly uncertain how to respond. Martinez seized the opportunity. "I'd be happy to note in my article how cooperative the town administration has been with transparency requests," he offered with a professional smile. "It makes for good press, especially with all the new development activity." The implicit threat worked. Jenkins nodded reluctantly and produced a ring of keys. "The main archives are in room 103 down that hallway. The older records are in the basement, through the door at the end of the hall, but it's not well organized down there." "Thank you," Eleanor said graciously. "We'll find our way." Once out of earshot, Martinez joined them in the hallway. "Blackwood's people are already inserting themselves into town operations," he murmured. "That clerk has only been working here 3 days, according to my sources." "All the more reason to move quickly," Eleanor replied, leading them toward the basement access. "What's the status of the filing?" "My editor has it scheduled for the 2 o'clock news cycle," Martinez confirmed. "Front page digital, with teasers already running on social media. The headline is deliberately provocative. Blackwood Industries expansion built on buried secrets?" "Perfect," Eleanor approved. "That gives us approximately 90 minutes before chaos erupts." The basement door was locked with a modern keypad system that seemed incongruous against the building's aged architecture. Eleanor frowned at the unexpected obstacle. "This is new," she observed. "William didn't mention electronic security." Martinez stepped forward. "Allow me." From his pocket, he produced what appeared to be a maintenance key card. "The benefits of cultivating sources in municipal services. Maintenance override works on most systems installed by county contractors." The keypad beeped and the lock disengaged. They entered a dimly lit stairwell that descended into the basement level, a cavernous space filled with metal shelving units, sagging under the weight of boxed records and dusty file cabinets. "Where do we even start?" Emma wondered aloud, surveying the labyrinthine archive. Eleanor consulted a small notebook. According to William's notes, the sealed room should be behind the north wall, near the original foundation. They moved through the basement, navigating between towering shelves of municipal minutiae, tax records, meeting minutes, permit applications spanning decades of small-town governance. The air was musty with neglect and the particular staleness of underground spaces rarely visited. "Here," Martinez called softly from a corner where the original stone foundation was visible. This section of wall looks different. Newer masonry, different mortar pattern. Emma approached, examining the wall carefully. No obvious door or access panel was visible, but when she ran her fingers along the seam where old foundation met newer brickwork, she felt a slight draft, air movement where there should be none. "There's something behind here," she confirmed, excitement building. "But how do we get in?" Eleanor pointed to a small metal plate near the floor, what might be mistaken for an electrical access panel. "Try the key there." Emma knelt, brushing away decades of dust to reveal what appeared to be a simple maintenance access. The ornate key seemed ridiculously mismatched to such a utilitarian fixture, but when she inserted it into the barely visible keyhole, it slid in perfectly. The mechanism turned with surprising ease, as if regularly maintained. A soft click echoed in the basement silence, and a section of wall, perhaps 3 feet wide, swung inward on hidden hinges, revealing a narrow passage beyond. "Incredible," Martinez breathed, already documenting the discovery with his phone camera. A literal secret room in the town hall. How did no one notice this for decades? "People see what they expect to see," Eleanor replied, producing a small but powerful flashlight from her purse. "And in a building this old, in a town with limited resources for maintenance, who would question an odd corner or a maintenance panel?" The passage extended perhaps 15 feet before opening into a small room lined with metal filing cabinets, a Cold War-era records vault, preserved exactly as it had been sealed in the 1980s. But one cabinet stood out, newer, with a modern combination lock securing its drawers. "My grandfather's," Emma said with certainty. "But how do we open it without the combination?" Eleanor smiled faintly. William was methodical, but not particularly creative with his security measures. She knelt before the lock and carefully entered a 6-digit sequence. "Your parents' wedding anniversary followed by your birthday?" The lock disengaged with a satisfying click. Inside the cabinet were several sealed document tubes, external hard drives similar to those Eleanor already possessed, and, most prominently, a metal lockbox with evidence Blackwood personal culpability labeled across its top in William's neat block handwriting. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she lifted the box. "This is it. The missing piece." Eleanor checked her watch. "We need to move quickly. It's almost 1:30. The filing will hit the news soon, and Blackwood's people will be looking for us." They transferred the contents of the cabinet to their briefcases and carefully resealed the hidden room, leaving no trace of their presence. As they ascended the stairs back to the main level, Martinez received a text message that made him pause. "My editor just sent advance notice of the filing to Blackwood's PR team. As legally required," he informed them in a hushed tone. "The countdown has officially begun." They emerged from the basement to find the town hall's atmosphere dramatically changed. Staff hurried through hallways with anxious expressions. Phones rang continuously. At the reception desk, Jenkins was engaged in an animated conversation with a tall, silver-haired man in an expensive suit. "Harrison Blackwood himself," Eleanor whispered, instinctively angling her body to shield Emma from view. "We need an alternate exit." Martinez nodded toward a side corridor. "Service entrance through the tax assessor's office. This way." They moved swiftly but without obvious haste, maintaining the appearance of legitimate visitors conducting routine business. As they passed an open office door, Emma overheard a frantic conversation. "Lawsuit alleges deliberate contamination and cover-up spanning 25 years. Stock is already dropping in preemptive trading. Mr. Blackwood says to lock down all records immediately." The service entrance led to a small parking lot behind the building where Eleanor had presciently repositioned her car during their research. They loaded their precious cargo into the trunk and were about to depart when Emma spotted a familiar figure hurrying toward the town hall's main entrance. Catherine Meyer, the Blackwood attorney who had called her at the farm. "Drive," Eleanor instructed Martinez, who had taken the wheel, "directly to the rendezvous point. No stops, no detours." As they pulled away from Pinewood Town Hall, Emma finally allowed herself to examine the lockbox's contents. Inside were documents, photographs, and most significantly, a USB drive and what appeared to be a vintage microcassette recorder with several tiny tapes labeled with dates spanning the past 20 years. "Voice recordings," she realized. "My grandfather was recording conversations." Eleanor nodded grimly. "Single-party consent is legal in Illinois. If William managed to record Harrison Blackwood or his representatives making incriminating statements, then we have him," Emma concluded, a fierce satisfaction blooming in her chest. irrefutable evidence of his personal involvement. The rendezvous point proved to be an abandoned service station 10 miles outside Pinewood, well away from major roads. As they pulled in, another vehicle was already waiting, a nondescript van with tinted windows. A man Emma didn't recognize stood beside it, scanning the surroundings with professional vigilance. Deshaun Williams, Eleanor explained as they parked. Former client, now security consultant. He's been monitoring the Blackwood estate since early this morning. Deshaun approached as they exited the car, his expression grim. Dr. Chen, he greeted Eleanor formally. We've confirmed your suspicions. They're holding someone at the estate, heavily guarded in the converted carriage house behind the main residence. Emma's heart leaped. Daniel, you're sure? Positive identification from our thermal imaging and intercepted radio communications refer to a special guest requiring medical attention. His jaw tightened. They've been interrogating him. Cold fury washed through Emma. We need to get him out. And we will, Eleanor assured her. But first we need to secure the evidence and complete the filing. That's our leverage. Martinez transferred the evidence containers to the van. I'm heading straight to Chicago with this. My editor is standing by with a team of fact-checkers in the paper's legal department. We'll have the first wave of revelations online within hours. And the authorities, Emma asked. Can we trust them, given Blackwood's connections? Local law enforcement is compromised, Eleanor acknowledged. But I've already forwarded preliminary evidence to the State Attorney General's office and the regional EPA director, both political rivals of Blackwood's primary allies. Self-interest sometimes serves justice. She turned to Deshaun. What's the security situation at the estate? 4 perimeter guards, 2 more inside the carriage house. Professional equipment, but sloppy protocols. They're corporate security, not military or law enforcement. He projected a satellite image of the property on his tablet. There's a service road that provides access to within 100 yards of the target building. Minimal coverage from their camera system. You're planning a rescue operation, Emma realized, studying the improvised tactical briefing with growing amazement. Tonight, Eleanor corrected. After the lawsuit becomes public, after the initial evidence reaches the authorities, when Blackwood will be distracted managing the crisis. She met Emma's stunned expression with calm resolve. Your grandfather fought this battle for 25 years, Emma. He taught me that justice requires both legal action and moral courage, sometimes simultaneously. I'm coming with you, Emma stated, brooking no argument. Eleanor studied her great niece thoughtfully, then nodded. William said you had your mother's determination. I see he was right. She turned back to Deshaun. Prepare the equipment. We move at midnight. As Martinez departed with the evidence bound for Chicago, Eleanor led Emma to the van. Inside was a mobile command center, communications equipment, surveillance monitors, even tactical gear stored in locked cases. Barrett and Chen specializes in environmental justice, Emma observed wryly. This seems somewhat beyond typical legal services. Environmental justice often requires environmental investigation, Eleanor replied, a hint of steel beneath her composed exterior. Corporations that poison communities rarely leave convenient paper trails voluntarily. We've developed certain specialized capabilities over the years. She handed Emma a bulletproof vest. Your grandfather would be furious with me for involving you in this, but he would also understand that you have earned the right to see this through to the end. Emma accepted the vest, a strange calm settling over her. 2 days ago, she'd been a different person, a journalist with deadlines and a carefully constructed life that excluded her family history. Now she stood preparing for what amounted to a covert operation against one of the state's most powerful men. Daniel risked everything to protect me and this evidence, she said simply. I won't leave him in Blackwood's hands. Eleanor's phone chimed with an incoming message. She checked it, her expression shifting subtly. It's begun. The lawsuit is public. Martinez's first article is live. She handed Emma the phone. The Chicago Tribune's website displayed the headline, Breaking Major Lawsuit Alleges, Decades of Environmental Crimes by Blackwood Industries, 12 Deaths Linked to Illegal Chemical Testing. Beneath it was a photograph of Emma's parents, alongside a picture of the Pinewood farm before its destruction. The first paragraph mentioned William Hayes' 25-year quest for justice and the suspicious circumstances of his recent death. They'll come after us with everything now, Emma said quietly. Yes, Eleanor agreed. But for the first time in 25 years, Harrison Blackwood is the one running scared. She squared her shoulders, a fierce determination in her eyes that reminded Emma powerfully of her grandfather. Tonight, we finish what William started. We bring Daniel home, and we ensure that justice, so long delayed, is finally served. As twilight descended over the Illinois countryside, they made their final preparations. The Blackwood estate waited in the gathering darkness, a fortress of privilege and corruption that had stood untouchable for decades. But its walls were about to be breached, not by force of arms, but by the truth that William Hayes had sacrificed everything to preserve. Emma checked her equipment one last time, thinking of her parents, her grandfather, and Daniel, all victims of Harrison Blackwood's ruthless pursuit of wealth and power. She felt no fear now, only a crystalline clarity of purpose. "It's time, Soren," Eleanor announced as the last light faded from the sky. They moved toward the van, toward the coming confrontation that would determine whether 25 years of sacrifice would finally yield justice, or if the powerful would, once again, escape accountability for their crimes. The Blackwood estate stood bathed in security lighting, like a fortress against the midnight darkness. Emma crouched beside Eleanor and Deshawn at the edge of the woods, watching the increased activity that followed their lawsuit filing. Security personnel moved with obvious anxiety, their usual disciplined patterns now fractured by urgency. "Blackwood arrived half an hour ago," Deshawn whispered, monitoring the thermal imaging display. "They've doubled security at the carriage house where they're holding Daniel." "They're reacting exactly as predicted," Eleanor observed with clinical detachment. "Fear makes even powerful men careless." Emma studied the surveillance feed from the drone hovering high above the estate. The carriage house stood separate from the main residence, connected by an elegant covered walkway. 2 armed guards flanked its entrance, another patrolling its perimeter with mechanical precision. "Is Daniel still inside?" she asked, heart constricting. Deshawn adjusted the thermal imaging device. "Upper floor, northeast corner. 1 stationary heat signature. That's him. 2 guards nearby. The building has independent power and security systems." "Our window opens now," Eleanor announced as her phone displayed an encrypted message. She nodded to Deshawn, who activated the first phase of their plan. Moments later, alarms blared from the main entrance. Emergency lights flashed, accompanied by the sounds of vehicles and authoritative voices. "What's happening?" Emma whispered, confused by the sudden commotion. "EPA Emergency Response Team with federal warrants," Eleanor explained, satisfaction flickering across her composed features. "Our evidence filing triggered an immediate public health investigation." On the surveillance feed, the effect was dramatic. Security personnel abandoned their posts, rushing toward the main entrance, where official vehicles with flashing lights had appeared. Executives emerged from the mansion in various states of disarray. "Move now," Deshawn instructed, rising from their hiding place. "We have approximately 7 minutes before they reorganize." They traversed the wooded perimeter with swift efficiency, Deshawn leading with night vision equipment, Eleanor following with surprising agility, Emma bringing up the rear. Rather than approaching from the front where all attention was focused, they used the service road that accessed the rear of the property. "Camera ahead," Deshawn warned, halting their advance behind a maintenance shed. "Full coverage of this approach." Eleanor checked her watch, counting down softly. 3, 2, 1. On cue, the indicator light on the security camera blinked out. 2-minute loop activated, Deshawn explained as they rushed forward. Expensive but effective hack of their security system. They reached the carriage house's service entrance, originally designed for actual carriage maintenance, which featured both electronic and conventional locks. Deshawn defeated both with practiced ease using specialized equipment. "Corporate security systems prioritize appearance over actual security," he remarked as the door swung open. "Predictable vulnerabilities if you know where to look." The carriage house's lower level housed Harrison Blackwood's collection of vintage automobiles and crated artwork. A spiral staircase led to the upper floor quarters. 2 armed guards at the top of the stairs, Deshawn whispered, consulting his thermal imaging. "Stationary and complacent. They're not expecting internal threats." "Non-lethal intervention only," Eleanor reminded him firmly. Deshawn produced what resembled a modified flashlight. "Sonic disruptor. 10 seconds of disorientation, no permanent damage." He ascended the stairs with ghost-like silence, paused at the top, then activated the device. Emma heard nothing but watched as Deshawn moved swiftly to secure 2 collapsing figures. "Clear?" he called softly. Emma hurried up the stairs to find 2 unconscious security guards, their weapons now in Deshawn's possession. He led them down a short hallway to a heavy door with a small viewing slot. Through it, Emma glimpsed a figure handcuffed to a chair, Daniel, bruised but alive. Relief nearly buckled her knees as Deshawn unlocked the door, with keys taken from the guards. Daniel looked up at their entrance, disbelief transforming into recognition. "Emma?" How did you... Explanations later, Eleanor interjected, already working to free him from his restraints. Can you walk? Not elegantly, but yes. Despite his injuries, Daniel managed a pained smile as his gaze fixed on Emma. I knew you'd find Eleanor. I knew you'd continue. We found everything, Emma told him, supporting his weight as he stood. The recordings, all of it. Martinez has it, and the EPA investigation has already begun. Fierce satisfaction gleamed in Daniel's eyes. Then whatever they did to me was worth it. Will's work matters now. We're all leaving together, Emma insisted, helping him toward the door. Deshawn suddenly raised his hand in warning. Probo. Blackwood's dispatched 4 additional security personnel to check the carriage house. ETA 2 minutes. Alternative exit needed, Eleanor stated calmly. Daniel, does the east side loading entrance for the vehicles still function? Daniel nodded, wincing as he put weight on his injured leg. Loading doors for the car collection. They're alarmed and heavily secured, though. We've abandoned stealth for speed now, Deshawn pointed out. The EPA team has Blackwood occupied with federal warrants, and local police are en route based on anonymous tips. Extraction is our only priority. He guided them to massive wooden doors designed for moving vintage automobiles. The electronic alarm system fell quickly to his expertise, but the mechanical locks required more direct methods. Stand back, he instructed, placing a small device against the lock mechanism. Directed charge, minimal noise, maximum effect. The small explosion sounded more like a sharp crack than a detonation. The door swung free, revealing the manicured lawn, and beyond it, the tree line where their vehicle waited. Direct path across open ground, Deshawn directed. Continuous movement, no hesitation. They emerged into the night air just as shouts erupted from the direction of the main house. Flashlight beams swept the grounds as security personnel responded to the breach. Emma and Eleanor supported Daniel between them, moving toward the protective darkness of the forest. They had covered half the distance when an authoritative voice rang out behind them. Stop immediately! Emma turned to see Harrison Blackwood himself standing at the carriage house corner, flanked by armed security. Even in crisis, he maintained an air of imperious authority, dressed in hastily donned formal attire, silver hair catching the security lights. He held a pistol with unwavering confidence. Ms. Hayes, I presume, he called, his voice carrying across the lawn. William's granddaughter at last. Deshawn positioned himself protectively, but Blackwood's security personnel had their weapons trained on the group. Your game is finished, Blackwood, Eleanor called back, her voice steady and clear. The evidence is public now. Authorities have the soil samples, medical records, internal memos ordering the cover-up, and Williams' recordings of your conversations spanning decades. Uncertainty flickered across Blackwood's composed features. What recordings? 20 years of your own words, Daniel added, standing straighter despite his injuries. Will documented everything, every threat, every admission, every order to eliminate evidence and silence witnesses. Fear briefly distorted Blackwood's expression before calculation replaced it. An interesting claim, but the situation remains straightforward. You've trespassed on private property and broken into a secure building. My security team would be justified using lethal force. With EPA investigators and police already on the premises? Eleanor challenged. That would be remarkably unwise even for you. A tragic accident during an attempted eco-terrorist attack, Blackwood corrected smoothly. Ms. Hayes is already wanted for arson, and Mr. Reeves has a documented history of environmental extremism. He gestured to his security team. Detain them, alive if possible, but I leave the final determination to your professional judgment. The guards advanced methodically across the lawn. Emma felt their options dwindling. They couldn't outrun trained security with Daniel injured. Deshawn was skilled but outnumbered. Without warning, blinding light flooded the grounds from above. The distinctive sound of helicopter rotors drowned all other noise, as a powerful searchlight pinned Blackwood and his security team in its glare. Illinois State Police, boomed an amplified voice from the aircraft. Drop your weapons immediately. The property is surrounded. More lights appeared at the estate's perimeter. Police vehicles, their sirens now audible beneath the helicopter's persistent thrum. Uniformed officers advanced with weapons drawn. Blackwood's security personnel, recognizing the inevitable, carefully placed their weapons on the ground. Blackwood himself stood immobilized in the searchlight's harsh illumination, pistol still in hand. I recommend compliance, Mr. Blackwood, came Ryan Martinez's voice as he emerged from the tree line, accompanied by journalists with video equipment. You're currently broadcasting live on multiple news feeds. Not the publicity your investors will appreciate. Fury and disbelief contorted Blackwood's features as he finally lowered his weapon. State police officers moved efficiently to secure him and his security team. This is a temporary setback, Blackwood snarled as handcuffs closed around his wrists. My connections extend beyond your comprehension. Harrison Blackwood, announced a stern-faced woman in EPA insignia, approaching with official documentation. I'm serving emergency orders freezing all Blackwood Industries assets pending investigation of environmental crimes, corporate fraud, and obstruction of justice. As authorities led Blackwood away, Martinez approached their group. Perfect timing, Eleanor remarked with dry understatement. The journalist smiled. I may have informed state police that an illegal detention was occurring at the same location they were serving environmental warrants. The helicopter was their tactical decision. Apparently, they've had their own suspicions about Blackwood, but lacked actionable evidence until now. Emma barely registered their exchange. Her attention focused on Daniel, who leaned heavily against her as the adrenaline ebbed from his system. Medic, she called urgently. We need medical assistance here. The following hours blurred into a cascade of activity. Paramedics treated Daniel's injuries, severe bruising and a sprained ankle, painful but not life-threatening. Police collected detailed statements, their initial skepticism dissolving as Eleanor methodically presented her credentials and documentation. By dawn, they had relocated to a secure Chicago hotel where Eleanor's legal team had established a command center for what was rapidly becoming the state's largest environmental scandal. Emma sat beside Daniel's bed in an adjoining room where he rested under mild sedation. The television silently displayed aerial footage of the Blackwood estate surrounded by law enforcement and EPA vehicles. The scrolling headline announced, Breaking, Blackwood CEO arrested in decades-long environmental cover-up, multi-billion-dollar lawsuit filed. He succeeded, Emma whispered, though Daniel couldn't hear. Grandpa Will finally got his justice. Eleanor entered quietly, carrying a tablet displaying nationwide news coverage. Despite the sleepless night, she maintained her characteristic composure. The story has broken nationally, she reported with quiet satisfaction. Blackwood's stock has collapsed. His political allies are already distancing themselves. What happens now? Emma asked, her journalist's instincts automatically framing the narrative. The legal process will require years, Eleanor acknowledged. But immediate consequences are already unfolding. The EPA has suspended all Blackwood operations pending comprehensive testing. The Attorney General has initiated a criminal investigation into the Pinewood deaths, including your parents. She sat beside Emma, her professional demeanor softening to familial warmth. William would be immensely proud of what you've accomplished. What you've both accomplished, she added, glancing at Daniel. Few would have demonstrated such courage against such powerful opposition. Emma shook her head. I didn't intend bravery. I just wanted truth and justice for my family. That's how important battles typically begin, Eleanor observed. Not with grand declarations, but with human needs for truth and justice. Martinez joined them with fresh coffee and a folder of documents. Blackwood's legal team is already filing dismissal motion bars, he reported, but they're gaining no traction. The evidence is simply too comprehensive. He opened the folder, revealing photographs of the Pinewood farm before its destruction. These might have personal significance. We found them in Tribune archives. Your grandfather submitted them years ago, seeking investigation. Emma accepted the photographs reverently. Her parents smiled beside a younger William Hayes, the farmhouse pristine in the background, fields vibrant with crops, glimpses of the life destroyed by Blackwood Industries. Will the full truth about my parents ever be known? She asked quietly. The medical evidence is definitive, Eleanor replied gently. William's preserved toxicology reports show lethal concentrations of Blackwood's experimental compound in their systems, far higher than any other victim. The recordings confirm Harrison Blackwood personally ordered targeted contamination after discovering your father's evidence gathering. The confirmation of premeditated murder, after decades of believing in a tragic but random epidemic, struck Emma with physical force. I want to witness his trial, she said firmly. I want Blackwood to see me when justice is delivered. You will, Eleanor promised, as will Daniel and every surviving family member from Pinewood. Harrison Blackwood will face accountability with his victims as witnesses. Daniel stirred, his eyes opening. Emma, he called softly. She moved immediately to his side, taking his hand. I'm here. We're safe. Blackwood's in custody. Relief washed over his bruised features. William always said this day would come. that justice might delay but would eventually arrive if we maintained faith with truth. He was right, Emma affirmed, squeezing his hand. About that and so much more. As morning light illuminated the room, Emma recognized that the fear and urgency driving her for 3 days had finally subsided. In its place emerged something unexpected. Connection to the grandfather she'd never truly known, to the parents whose lives were stolen, and to the man beside her who had kept faith through 25 years of persistent pursuit of justice. 1 month later, Emma stood at the edge of her inherited property, watching EPA officials conducting comprehensive environmental testing. The farm building's charred remains had been cleared, revealing bare foundations where generations of her family had lived. "What are your plans for it?" Daniel asked, standing beside her. His physical wounds had healed, though a slight limp persisted. "Restoration," Emma answered without hesitation. "Not necessarily as a working farm, but as a home. Perhaps a memorial that honors what happened here." Harrison Blackwood remained in custody, denied bail, and facing multiple federal charges. His corporate empire had collapsed, his allies vanished, and William Hayes's methodically compiled evidence had proven devastating, particularly the recordings capturing Blackwood explicitly ordering the cover-up and Michael Hayes's targeted poisoning. "Eleanor believes the civil settlement will be unprecedented," Daniel noted, "though no financial compensation could address what was lost." "No," Emma agreed, "but it can fund environmental restoration throughout the region, provide health care for everyone affected by contamination, and ensure such corporate crimes never recur." She turned to face him directly. "I'm staying, Daniel, taking extended leave from the newspaper. I need to witness this, the restoration, the legal proceedings, Pinewood's healing." Something hopeful yet uncertain flickered in his expression. "I understand. It's where you belong now." "Where we belong," Emma corrected gently. "If you choose to stay, this has been your fight for 25 years. You deserve to see its completion." Daniel surveyed the landscape. Fields where contaminated soil underwent remediation. The creek where they'd escaped that first night. Foundation stones where generations of Hayes family had lived. "I'd welcome that," he said finally, cautious warmth in his smile. "Someone should ensure the environmental restoration meets proper standards." Emma laughed, surprising herself with the sound. After so much intensity and grief, it felt right. A commitment to move forward while honoring the past. They stood together as sunset cast long shadows across land that had witnessed tremendous suffering and resilience. In the distance, Pinewood's lights began twinkling, a town awakening from a 25-year nightmare, beginning its difficult journey toward healing. "Your grandfather often said the land remembers," Daniel remarked quietly. "That regardless of surface events, truth persists in the soil, water, and trees, waiting for those willing to search deeply enough." Emma nodded, feeling the wisdom of these words. "Then we'll ensure this land remembers the complete story. Not just tragedy, but justice finally delivered. Not just what was lost, but what was reclaimed." As darkness settled around them, they turned toward the rented cabin serving as temporary shelter until permanent arrangements could be made. Behind them, the Hayes farm stood silent, but no longer abandoned or haunted by secrets. Truth had finally emerged from hiding, bringing possibility for healing what had been broken so long ago. Justice, after 25 years of patient pursuit, had finally been served.